Relentless Homesteading. Welcome to part 3 of our story. Kind of the Odyssey of how we decided to go homesteading and then took the plunge, sold our house, got in the trailer, and we took off. And we landed here in the wilds of Washington. Here we go, element G, jumping into repairs. Welcome back. Once our trailer was situated, we got jumping into the repairs on the place. This story is just too good to pass up. Mrs. RH is just a trooper at, working at this place, and, we're kind of people that like things really clean, and that kind of goes extra with my wife. And there was a lot of stuff that wasn't clean at all. I mean, it was a disaster. And after one intense day of cleaning, I'll never forget, became kind of overwhelmed just about the scope of what had to be taken care of here and cleaned. And she came out and she was telling me about the biggest dust ball she'd ever seen. It just grossed her out. And I had to tell her it was a mouse nest. There were a number of those in some different places. I did say we came from the suburbs, didn't I? Yeah, I think I did. So she was cleaning the inside, and I was working mainly on the outside, trying to get first the roof sealed, the sides of the house sealed, getting all the exterior incursions fixed. That was step one, to prevent leakage from getting into the house and creating any more damage. So here you see some pictures. I got some pictures of some of the damage. This first one is some of the mouse damage you see from the outside of the kitchen walls. Yeah, it was just really disgusting. They just kind of built whole nests in there and been able to get up the walls into the house. And so here I'm ripping it out. And the first couple of pictures, and you see in this picture here where I've made the repairs to the 2x4s and buffered them up. So I continued to get everything sealed, did some roof repairs. Did a preliminary sealing of everything where we felt comfortable. And I'd already moved my tools over into the shop, so that I had my tools, of course, to work on it. Like I showed earlier, we had it in a storage unit, so those tools were all moved over. But then it was time to actually go down to California and get the rest of our stuff. We really didn't like paying for those storage units down there. Not cheap. We flew down. And Mrs. RH condescended to driving one of the trucks. She does not drive trucks. And we drove up, and this was in the middle of winter. We came over, there was snow on the hills. I mean, it was like snowstorms coming over. So we were driving these trucks up in the snowstorms. Now, in these few pictures, there's just, showing just some of the plumbing. There were many plumbing issues all over. This is just one that was in the area where the laundry room was, and getting those sinks plumbed and everything taken care of for the drains. That's another one of my favorite shots. I call it Demo Girl. There's Mrs. RH working in the kitchen with a chisel and a hammer, getting rid of those tiles, cleaning things up. We had to just, demo a bunch of stuff, get it out of there. And the next picture here, you see we took the cabinets, everything. We had to just pull it out of the kitchen. They actually had planned on throwing away the cabinets. They were oak cabinets. And they had started doing their remodel, and they were going to totally, redo the kitchen. So when they did some of their drywall and painting in some areas, they actually just let the stuff fly all over the cabinetry. And other places they just cut into it, and it was kind of a mess. But we had decided that we were going to salvage it. There was, the few doors that were missing, and some of the other elements I could redo. And we like oak. It was very 80s. It was These were probably put in the 80s. But hey, we liked it. We don't have to have the latest and greatest, so we're going to restore those cabinets. We pulled them all out of there. You see them here in our living room. And we did a lot of kitchen tear out. And here in this next picture, you see the cabinets are going back in. The faces were finished after this. The cabinets themselves didn't require as much refinishing, but all the faces, I sanded them completely down, restained them, and refinished them. Yeah, one of the issues that we found right away was that it had this leakage. Well, there's a little bit of leakage in the garage. I just noticed some dampness and mildew in there. But when we took the siding off, there was some rotted siding in some areas. And when we pulled it off, we found this rot that was just so pervasive. So you see that, the rotting of the post. There was the whole beam going across the top of one of the garage doors, and the whole post was mostly rotted out, as you'll see here. So yeah, that was quite a hassle. We had to jack up the roof there, the garage, and tear out that beam, tear out the post. Of course, when I started working on that, as soon as I got the thing open, got the garage door off, got everything open to the wind, you see I got some plastic down on it in this next shot. And as soon as I did that, then we got this big windstorm. No matter how much I'd anchor that stuff down, it was just ripping my plastic all over the place. Probably 70-mile-an-hour winds. That was something, but we did get it done. So here in this next picture, you'll see the garage with a post beam repair and the post repaired. This before I put the siding back on it. And here's a shot of the interior of the garage before the wallboard was put back on it in there. So obviously you have to take the wallboard out. You have to put in a temporary beam and jack that up. That you have to have some support on the roof when you take the other beam out, obviously. So siding repairs. This one section had to be just really deeply sanded down before it was restained and refinished. A lot of areas did some sanding. Now I told you that the lower 3 feet of siding they'd taken off. We had to find some siding, and we were able to actually find some that matched. We did some of that work ourselves, and we actually hired a couple different people to do the sanding, staining, and such. And that actually worked out well because I had a lot of structural things to deal with. Here you see we decided on the end of the house, we call it the bow. It really does stick out like a bow, and that's really where we get most of our weather, wind, as well as the sun beating down on that. So we decided to go with a cement board down there, a hardy board that looks very much like the cedar. I mean, it's really amazingly looks like the cedar. And we actually hired a company to do that and do some repairs on the roof as well. Got that done, and that's the same time we were working on the rest of the siding. Now here you see the back side of the house with the siding where it had been repaired, and we'd replaced the other. It really matched up quite well. I was quite surprised. You can't even tell that some of the siding's new and the other's old. So finally, it had been all done. I really like this picture here with you really get the kind of the feel of the cedar there. I love the look of cedar. I don't like the maintaining of it, but it's beautiful. Cedar's very nice. Now there were lots of draining issues. Well, the pole barn, I already showed you there was like an inch of water in the pole barn. It was horrible because I tried to store tools in there, and it's just wet all the time, so everything wants to rust. It's not good for my tools. So I started putting in drains. As I already shown, I have a tractor. I had purchased a tractor while we were waiting. And so here's a couple of ditches that I dug on each side of it, and ran drain pipes. We also wanted to, we had such a nice place on the point of this hill that we wanted to get, open up the view out to the river. So we hired some lumberjacks to come and actually take down the trees here. We had some of them that were limbed up, and we just decided it was a little better to just hire a crew and just get it done. And that allowed me to just continue working on what I was doing to get the house ready. So here you see all the rounds laying out there on the hill. Well, on one of the hills, it kind of wrapped around part of the house. Now, I talked earlier about that there was like a little dog kennel. Now here in this picture, you'll see that I decided to take the dog kennel and turn it into a woodshed. So I just basically built onto it. It had a steel roof, and then I just kind of added onto it. And one of the problems we had was with the front door. The front door, I think it was really always meant probably to be a temporary door. But anyway, had to rip out the whole, the front and the side lights, restructure all the area in the front of the house. So you see a picture here of the tear out, and also in the inside of the house. And I had to put in you know, because I was going to be working there for a while. So I basically had to seal off the inside of the house. I remember it was winter time. Now here's the finished picture of it. And you see the door, and inside it we've got some stained glass. Mrs. RH came up with the idea, we're trying to figure out what to do with this other stained glass, so she wanted it like suspended in the side light. So I welded up a section with an inner frame to put this stained glass into, and then just, you know, welded this thing up, and then we did, you know, sandwich of glass and had some glass ordered, and you know, installed the glass, and so turned out quite nice. And there was the porch to deal with. Now I told you about the porch was so rotten, if you were to step out towards the outside, you could have just fallen right through. And initially it looked like just the boards had to be replaced, but then as I started checking it out, everything was rotten, and pretty much the whole thing had to be replaced. But the result, we liked the result. You know, it turned out really beautifully. Here in this picture here, you get kind of an idea. You can see the door with the front porch. There's little ball trees out there in front that we brought up from California with us. And then we really got going on the kitchen. Well, he started cracking on working on the kitchen. Now, one of the elements we wanted in the kitchen is to, we didn't want to have a regular table. There was one area here that was just looked perfect for booth seating. So you see in this first picture where I'm, you know, working on, I actually designed a booth for it. Laid out, you know, how I was going to do all the woodwork. So this first picture, see, I'm working on one of the seat structures for it, and built all these things in the pole barn, and then I brought them down here, and you'll see them here installed in the kitchen. It's all set up here, and then you see in this next shot where here it is upholstered, and you'll actually see the steel frame table there. I welded up and set into the floor this frame for the table, and then built a tabletop for it. And one of the things we wanted to convert in the house is that they had some gas stoves in it. We didn't want to be burning gas. We wanted wood. We wanted to be able to heat the house with wood. We bought 2 wood stoves. You see in this picture, one of our sons, RW, came up and he was helping us. Here he's running the tractor, taking one of the stoves off of the trailer where he'd loaded up. And one of those boxes, I don't know, it was this one or the other one. One of them was 500 pounds and the other was like 350, 400 pounds. They're heavy, you know. This next picture in the upper wood stove, it was a stacked stone fireplace. We just love it. It was built back in the 60s. It's really beautiful. And they built the inner core of it. It was all 1/4-inch thick steel in there. This steel plate, and it had this nice kind of baffling in it, so it would actually direct the heat out. Very kind of unusual for that time. But actually a real extra pain. I had to get in there with a plasma torch and get in there and cut away all this stuff in order to be able to get this thing to fit and to be able to get the new pipes run up through it. You know, take the baffles out, cut away all this metal. So it was like being in hell, you know. Like, I had this stuff on and there's a little, you know, steel shooting all over the place. And I was pretty covered here, you know, but I didn't realize that, you know, the stuff would come down and splatter. So I want them like splattered up in the back of my heel and burnt through my socks. But, you know, hey, you know, you get hurt on jobs. Just think about it. You got to think about what could happen. So here we had to cut it all out, and finally see we got the stove set up before I got the side light in it. So you can see in this picture here where it's open, and then finally here it's finished. It was interesting trying to get the surround put on the stove, because you've got a very irregular surface. So, you know, maybe I'll detail that sometime. I did figure out a way to do it that worked really well. You know, like in the instructions, it's just supposed to be sitting on the outside of your fireplace. That would just look awful. I just couldn't do that. Had to be inset, had to look right. So anyhow, turned out beautiful. So that's the one on the upstairs you'll see. In this next picture, then we also did the one downstairs. And there was a brick surround down there. And that one went much easier to install. Both of them had outside air coming into them, so I actually routed pipes coming to them and to drive the outside air to both stoves. So here you see the second stove has been set into its opening, and it actually has an outer housing that the inner part slides into. Oh, it was really fun trying to lift these things up. I bought a motorcycle jack, which worked really well for this, and I've used it for a couple of other projects too. So you see a little bit of the outside air plumbing in this next picture. So bringing the outside air, the fireplaces here, They're both use the same chimney, two different stacks coming out of the same chimney, but then there was an ash dump down through them. So I was able to run the outside air from the top one down through the ash dump and all the way down, and then the bottom one used through that same thing, and then up through the ceiling, and then bring the outside air, combine it together through a plenum. And you see in this next picture up on the ceiling, I actually set it up with a filter, and I have an electric fan in there, which allows me on either of the stoves, I can flip a switch and it turns on that fan, which is actually probably 20 feet away in a wall. It turns on this fan, which then provides a little bit of forced air to be sure you're going to get proper drafting when you start a fire. So this actually forces the air into, forces the outside air into your stove. So when you start it up, at least you can, click that on, start it going. So this picture is just showing before I actually ran the ducts. There's a little plenum there where the ducts come to this box, and then from there the pipes go out and connect to the outside. So in this next picture, you see the lower stove is done, and we painted the bricks. We decided to just paint it the same as the walls. We like that look. So that was the wood stoves. Yeehaw! We were glad that was done. Now, one of the problems there was with the place, there were some issues with the septic. Well, we had brought someone out, and we couldn't find the septic. We brought some out, they couldn't find the septic. We brought another plumber out, they couldn't find the septic. We had to then hire a company with a special scope and a locator. So they were able to scope all the drains, which we wanted videos anyway, so they could scope the drains and figure out where we had any issues and be able to find out where the septic was. Well, the septic had been put in, and then a concrete porch had been poured over the top of the septic. No risers, nothing. It was just, the septic had never been serviced as far as we know. Now here in this picture, you'll see the top where once it was located, started cutting in and found, one of the tops to the septic, and then was able to locate the whole position. A lot of cutting with a concrete saw, a dry saw. And there was so much scrap. You'll see some of the scrap here. All the concrete were taken out. Oh, and the porch, of course, it wasn't like a 3-inch thick porch. I mean, this was, a lot of places, it was like 8-9 inches thick of concrete that had to be cut. And so then we were able to start building back up the septic. And here you see the risers, closing it back up. And then this next picture, start setting it up, getting the rebar in. Once I got it filled over the top, got the risers put on. Actually, I had to do repairs, put new pipes into the septic, and we had a septic guy come out and do some work on putting better venting on it, and I had the whole thing cleaned out, of course, and all that taken care of. So then getting it all back together again, getting rebar back in, and then getting concrete poured. Well, I didn't say that the septic also, these lines came out through the master bath. So master bath was the last place we worked on. The floors had to be cut to put in drains for the toilet, for the shower, put in, everything we needed there for the master bath. The pipes were filled here. This is where the concrete was put back over the floor. Here in this next picture is where you see the master bath where it was demoed. And then started rebuilding it up. Here's the shower. You see the red material on the walls, a sealant. That was after, I built up the shower. I did hire a guy to do the tile. So finally, the master bath got all put together. So finally, after getting through the master bath, we were able to move into the house. It took us 3.5 years. This is just such a small fraction of all the things that were done. I didn't want to spend days and days, showing you all the things that were done here. Now, then I was finally able to start getting on the garden. That was great. The year when I could finally start getting the garden put in. So you'll see here in this picture where this is called the lower garden. You see the garden planted, one of the flowers down there in the garden. Next year we had this massive storm. We had winds of 120 miles an hour coming up the draw up behind our house. The hill next to us, it was 100 miles an hour, the hill. Now here it had funneled up, which increased the wind speed. It was really amazing. But we had over 100 miles an hour, like I say, on the hill over there, and it didn't have the funnel effect. But we've got a draw right behind it. It just funnels the stuff right up to the house, right up to our porch. And with the trees removed, I had re-anchored this porch the summer before that storm came that year. I'd re-anchored it because I didn't like the anchors really weren't set well. There were a lot of problems with how stuff was hooked up, so I actually beefed it up a little bit. hoping that would help it out. Well, the wind came and just, I don't go through the whole storm, but it just ripped this thing off the house. You see in this picture here, the aftermath, just this thing was about 50 something feet long. It just took the whole, 20 feet on one side and like 12 on the other in width, and just boom, ripped the whole thing off over the house, sent it 300 feet over until it hit some trees and then fell down for like an accordion. That's just amazing. But what was also amazing is it didn't like destroy the house. It could have on its way out just sheared stuff off the top of the house, could have smashed windows. So that started another project, doing the back porch. On this porch redo, you see here where you see the support joists going out. Put in steel posts, put in the supports, and basically this thing was all set up to be, I made it this time to be cantilevered. So the end supports were allowed so they can flex up and down, and at the ends here it's actually allowed to where it can move up and down, and then also put some skylight / vents in it, so the wind could actually, when the wind cups underneath it, those things open up and allows the air to flow through it, so it should prevent it from ripping off there again. So here you see some more pictures of joists in there. One of the things interesting here, we moved down to this picture, we've got the framing, and then we've got where I put in the springs. Like I say, it's articulated. I actually have springs. These are like garage door springs, rated at, I think they're like 300 pounds a piece. Anyway, so there's 2 of them at each location, and then a shock absorber. So when this thing is allowed to like move up, it can move up to, I think, about 4 or 5 inches. So, but here in this picture, I'm actually tensioning the springs. So it was kind of neat. I was able to use a come along and a ladder and get those things up to get the springs tensioned, and actually worked out pretty easily to be able to get those tensioned. And here the springs are in place. Next one, you see the porch is sheeted, but you can see where the vents are down towards the bottom, and then sealed it off with various paints I had around. And it was interesting putting the tar paper when you're working by yourself. You find all these ways of making things work. So a ramp, and then I made it kind of like a wrapping paper dispenser. So I could pull the tar paper off right on up to the top. So in the next one, we got the tar paper on the roof. And then the asphalt roll roofing went up. And then the last thing, it took me a while to actually build the vent skylights. And each one of these has a damp spring in it, and then cables to prevent it, to limit it, so that it can only go up so far. But we've had like 70 miles an hour wind, and you'll see the things, you can hear them open up and they come back down. Where they open up and, vent off the wind coming in. So it's worked out really well. It sure is a lot more beautiful. But that was a long project. That took me the whole summer. It took me the whole summer that year. So like I say, this is just a small sampling of the projects that were done here. Every day we're very thankful to the Lord for not only directing us to the place He wanted us to be in, but helping me all through. I'd love to tell you about all the stories of different things that, there were times when God, not only helped me directly, prevented me from hurting myself, times with chainsaw where I was cutting from the wrong place and would have had a backlash situation. I've had a number of things that were close calls, and God's gotten us through a lot of challenges up here. Now, one of the best times that we have up here is when our boys come to visit. They're both grown up now, but so we got some added shots here, some bonus features. Our boys on the mountain. Both our boys love to do projects. We grew up doing projects. They're both very, quite adept, mechanically inclined. They love working on projects. So whenever they come up here, that's the thing. They love to get into some other project. So I always try to have some interesting project for them to work on when they're going to come up here. Here in this first picture, we've got our younger boy, RW. He's working on welding a rack for me. Wanted to put my winch onto the front of my tractor. So he did all the cuts on that and the welding, so welded all that up. And here in this next picture, he's got it finished, and here it's on the front with and here's RW out on the tractor hauling in some of the logs. This next picture, we actually got out to Mount St. Helens. I already talked about before about the stubs. Here's another same picture of RW. Now on the porch project, our other son, RA, came up while I was working on the porch project, and he helped me on, I think here he's grinding some of the porch supports. This next shot here, he's doing some digging. And sometimes both boys come up. We get into playing games. One of the things is playing pinochle. Yeah, I grew up a military brat, so that's where the pinochle came from. Yeah, here in this next shot, here we're down at the river just kind of having some fun. Hiking around down there and just checking things out. Here the boys are pitching some hay together. You know, I don't have farm animals, but I use hay in the gardens. Well, one of our favorite things to do is practice marksmanship. Here's our older boy, R.A., with his pistol. Next shot, he's got his AR-15. It's kind of in the other shot, you can see this is a wilderness shooting range. Yeah, R.A. earned some shooting awards in the military. But, God, we love having them up on the hill, and even though they're grown up, they still enjoy having fun. We get in and get those projects done, and we have a good time up here. Here the boys are loafing between some branch loads. After we get a windstorm, there's always all these branches, so we go around and collect up all the branches. So here they are loafing after a windstorm. And here's a little video clip of them having a good time. Thank you for joining us here at RH Homestead, Relentless Homesteading. Comments, please. Where are you on your journey? What are you interested in? How can we help you? And if you haven't yet, please subscribe. We've got a lot more how-to coming in future episodes. A lot more gardening coming up. We're just about ready to start on another garden season. I've got a whole bunch of things planned for that. RH signing off. Hasta la Proyecto.